So, sorcery rather than sorcery.
Yeah.
With the U, S-O-U-R-C-E-R-Y, is learning to play at the source. Right? And these movements that are symbolic of that creative activity that occurs at the source, they are movements of creation. So one thing, these are quite stimulating, and so it is best if you have a weak heart to gauge your activity in this. So don't do as many or do less than somebody that's more healthy might do it. Less is sometimes more. So also for the movements, it's best to have a teeth guard or a mouth guard. So because it incorporates a lot of force. So you want to protect your teeth because many times you'll be clenching down on your teeth naturally. It's not a part of the movement, but when you utilize force, there is that natural tendency to clamp on your teeth, and you don't want to destroy your teeth. So also, as an advice, these movements should give you energy, not deplete you of energy. If using these movements deplete you of energy, then you should not do them. Put them on the shelf for a while, and then come back to them maybe a couple of years later and try them again. These are movements to groom luminosity and to move the gap into its original position, where it was very small, very tight, so energy is less likely to leak out. In the human paradigm, with the gap, there are three energy realities. One is in a normal thing where the gap is closed and tight, you gain one energy at the expense of another energy. Right? So you want to move it to where it's closed. So you gain more energy and you lose less energy. As you, in a state of human decline, you lose more energy than you gain. So we want to have the greater vitality into our older years. And so that necessitates making the gap very tiny, very small, and occasionally closing it altogether. So, and these, you'll be able to measure your progress with these movements, especially the first one that I will demonstrate. It's called the Gateway of Light, and it's very simple. It's a meditative technique. It's the core technique of the Toltec to measure your energy, right? To measure the emanations of your energy field. So usually these energies are very dispersed. It's very hard to measure. But there is a strategic way to measure it, and that is through the hands and the arms. Right? The hand, in symbolic form, the hands and the arms are the demonstrators of intent. They allow intent to move. Right? The physical body, the torso, and the rest of your body remains still, right? As a form of resistance to whatever your arms and hands are doing. So it's a movement of defiance, right, to a motion, because intent is felt in its motion and its stillness, in its energy motivation and its defiance. So all these things come into play, especially when you're in a human form, when you're in a meat body, so to speak. That is sort of very complicated, you know. So the first technique is utilized to not only gain a sense of your energy, close the gap in your energy field, or measure its openness. It's also a technique to assemble an assemblage of the assemblage point, right? Which is significant in the Toltec mechanics. Right? Usually the assemblage point is located in between the shoulder blades, fixated there, out and back. Right? This is how it occurs in the human form in its sense of stagnation. You want to get the assemblage point to be more fluid. What we're trying to do is move the assemblage point over to the front. The front of your energy field has to do with how you're the effect of things. Your senses are more configured in the front than they are anywhere else. Right? Because you have your sense of sight, your sense of hearing is directed all in front of you. Although the sense of hearing is more kind of stereophonic. So as we move the assemblage point to the front, we are eliminating the effects of normal, everyday, mundane reality and moving it into the second attention, right, where the non-ordinary occurs. Right? So we are more the effect of the movement of the assemblage point to the front rather than the emotional quandaries that come and pick at our buttons. We're making a major movement in sorcery. So it's basically goes like this. You have your elbows connected around by on the sides here, by your spleen and your kidneys, or spleen and liver, excuse me, and or you could do it by the kidneys, right? These are important energy centers that are mostly deficient. So these are not really power centers. These are centers that can become power centers once you solve the riddle of energy. Mostly they are deprived centers, right, that have many demands. So we are going to feed it energetically. You know, one thing is that we are very deprived beings of energy. So we need to feed our souls more than we need to feed our bodies. Right? You can always tell how starved you are by fasting. If you are hungry within the first hour, first couple of hours of fasting, you have used up your stored energy very quick. But if you can go like a day or so, you have more stored energy than most. So, eventually in fasting you get to a numb point where your body just turns off hunger. So that's not the issue here. The issue is not to fast, but to measure how much conserved energy you have, or how much potential for stored energy you have. And fasting is one of the ways to do that. So then, okay, the elbows are connected to the spleen and the liver, and you're feeling the energy like they do in Taoism, what they call the energy ball. But you're not going like this, you're just remaining still, right? And you're allowing the energy within this area to form, right? And you start feeling a density form there. That density is telling you something significant about your energy field. Now, you also feel a pulse coming up. The pulse is the beginning of the assemblage point, right? And that's what we're trying to rescue from the gap, which is that hole in the energy field that sucks in the assemblage point, so that our perception is isolated in the first attention, right? So we're trying to get that sensation of a pulse. Pulse is life energy. Right? And you have pulses all over your body at various other places. But this feeling it in here is unifying the field. Right? You're taking all the pulses and you're feeling it you're feeling a unified field in between your hands. Right? All the nerve endings from your brain end up in your hands and your feet. So the fingers are how energy is dispersed, right? The wrists are how energy is integral, right? So this is, you have various pulse points here on the wrist, and that comes into play too. If you have a hard time feeling the pulse, just sort of subtly take your attention to your wrists as you're feeling the density between your hands, and that will bring in the pulse more powerfully for you. So sometimes you need a little extra attention to feel the pulse consistently, right? And at certain points, the pulse will fade in, it'll fade out, it'll fade in. What we want to do is get it to a consistency of perception, right? And what you're working here is mainly invisible energy, right? In the first attention, right? But when you close your eyes and you focus upon it, you're starting, as a result of feeling it, you are shifting into the second attention, and into the third attention. There are all overlaps in between the first attention, the second attention, and the third attention. As you evolve into the second attention, you'll notice some of it will start to filter down into the first attention. As you shift into the third attention, you'll know that some of it will shift into the second attention, into the first attention. So the boundaries between the two are completely arbitrary. You know, the only boundaries are the human boundaries, right? And that's basically what you're going to get the sense of. But the way to feel it is energetically. Once you feel it energetically, you can plot the human dilemmas that make the boundaries. You know, you can work on those issues. You know, and usually those are coagulated around the gap. So basically, it's just a meditative technique where you get in touch with the energy. So, and it's done with the eyes closed, with the hands feeling the energy, and the elbows connected to the spleen and the liver. So anybody that has, it shouldn't be no problem, especially if you're women and you have mammary glands that might conflict. It's over to the side, over here. So it shouldn't interfere. I've had several questions like that from women, so I thought I'd put that in. So that completes the first movement of sorcery.
Can I just ask you a couple of questions about like the details of the feet parallel, or do they have to be parallel? Or
No, you're usually sitting down.
Usually do it sitting down?
You can sit down and get comfortable because you're going to be focused on the energy. That's the main concern. It's not a movement. It's a perception of movement of energy, not the human movement.
Is there any reason not to do it standing up?
No, you can if you want.
Okay.